Our second speaker I'd like to introduce is Daynes, who is the Women's Liberation Officer at the Student Association. Daisy will be exploring the possibility of deconstructing learned gendered behaviour, the concept of the girls' bathroom, and why it's important to confront the uncomfortable internalised misogyny that exists in all of us. So welcome to Daisy.
Hello, hi everyone. Thank you, Patrick. So just to introduce myself to everybody, my name is Daisy Daynes. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and I'm a GDL student at the University of Law. I'm a legal writer for the Hate Crime Unit, and I am Student Association Women's Liberation Officer. So today I wanted to talk at this event because I wanted to escalate discussions about gender and how prevalent the concept of gender is. And it is just that, a societal concept. So I'll be looking at the prevalence and significance of internalised misogyny. So about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I think with a couple of members here actually, I attended a transgender inclusivity workshop. And the question posed to the group was, how often do you confront your gender? Or something along those lines. Gender in this context, not necessarily meaning sex, gender in this case referring to the characteristics and attributes associated with being male or being female. So for me, I confront my gender every day, and my life is about being a woman. I am women's officer, so I represent anybody who identifies as female. And I do a lot of campaigning for women's rights and female representation. I'm also a lingerie stylist, so I'm daily confronted with questions as to what it means to be feminine, but also I'm binary. And so gender has become a significant part of my life. But when is this not considered to be a positive thing? When does my commitment to my own womanness begin to be detrimental to me as a person? So one of my favourite progressive feminists, Florence Given, she is such a wonderful presence online. She constantly makes me feel uncomfortable by exposing the internalised misogyny that exists within all of us. Regardless of our sex, our gender, our sexuality, it's internalised and it exists in everybody. And recently she used the example of the women's bathroom. And she said, you know, this is somewhere where women share secrets, reapply their makeup, they cry, they brush their hair, they compose themselves, and, you know, put themselves up into position, wiggle their skirt into the right place. They become their true selves without the pressure of the male gaze. And she described the women's bathroom as the backstage to the performance that is our lives outside of the bathroom, in this case, the bar. You know, the bathroom becomes a place of safety and retreat from the demands expected of you on the outside of the bathroom. So then you think, well, no, surely women just go to the toilet in the toilet, and they just, you know, make themselves presentable, ready to go. But the question is, who are we making ourselves presentable for, and why? And why do we take ourselves off to the toilet to cry? And why do we insist on going to the bathroom when we don't feel our best? You know, we insist on saying to each other, go on girl, get some lippy on and get back out there. And, you know, many women behave in this way as not to destroy the idealised image of woman that is expected by so many men. And this internalised misogyny is destructive, not only for women, but for the community and for the state, ultimately. And it is something intuitively in all of us. We all grow and we all learn and we all listen from the environment we live in. And even if our parents brought us up respecting gender and womanhood and inclusivity, there's no doubt that the wider community has influenced our beliefs and so our manifestations about sex and gender without us even noticing it happening. So when Florence addressed the issue, namely, how do we deconstruct ourselves and rebuild without this internalised misogyny? Is it even possible? And in this discussion, the amount of women who came back saying, well, my whole existence has been based on complying with the patriarchy. I rely on internalised misogyny to exist and function. You know, who am I without that? And I thought that was really interesting because we can't remove what we have learned from our culture. And that is why women are choosing to confront it. We can't go back and unlearn. And there's still a long way to go before the true impact of the patriarchy is understood. So women are choosing to confront this instead. And this is why feminists are represented as angry and emotional and difficult. It's because they are angry and they are emotional and they will be difficult. And I'm not necessarily saying that you have to be angry to be a feminist or that all feminists have to be angry, but by being quiet and not challenging gender inequality, the patriarchy is only reinforced. And that's the dangerous thing about silence. It assumes compliance without agreement. So I won't list here the various reasons why confronting gender adversity is important on a social and moral level, but it seems as though the moral justifications are not always sufficient enough to bring about change. Recently, I published an article for the Hate Crime Unit entitled "Empowering the Economic Potential of Women," which looked at how women have been previously neglected from economic models and analyses because business and progress and finance and law were considered male activities. So in my research, I discovered how supporting female economic independence and power could massively contribute to the progress of the national and global economy. A study by the Women's Business Council states that equalising women's productivity and employment to that of a man could increase the UK's GDP by 35%, or an additional £600 billion to the UK economy. Businesses would benefit from having a more skilled workforce, and the overall quality of products and of services would increase because of the talent pool is diversified. Therefore, even in strict business and development senses, gender equality benefits everyone. Women represent 50% of the population, and so they represent 50% of the world's, in this case, economic potential. So if national governments made paid work accessible and safe and viable for women, we could mobilise that remaining percentage of economic potential. So I think it's a shame to think that there are many out there who need a dry motive like the economy to understand the importance of conceding to women's demands for equality. However, it's just an example of the many reasons why it's crucial to take gender equality seriously. Many might say that we do live in a fair society where men and women are treated equally, and point to the Equality Act and various other pieces of legislation. But what we must understand is that gender equality cannot alone be measured by the legislation or by facts or by statistics. From what I've learned, and I'm still learning, is that gender inequality must also be understood and measured from the lived and personal experiences of women. We all have a certain degree of learned internalised misogyny, and it will be uncomfortable confronting that, but we must all at least be prepared to challenge the issues that make us uncomfortable and explore why this makes us uncomfortable. Very recently, The Guardian released the evidence from a study that provided that 97% of all British women had experienced sexual harassment in some form. And after posting it on my Instagram account, the sheer amount of messages I received from predominantly men, clearly feeling personally victimised by the statistic. So not only, one chap's message to me was, "This is incorrect. Not all men sexually harass women." And by saying that, he not only invalidated the evidence, but he also completely missed the point of the study. And I had various other comments, mostly defensive and mostly from men. This is because the statistic is uncomfortable, and the facts provide that most women would have been subject to some form of sexual harassment, and they don't like to believe that this is true. And this is clearly the reality for most women. And instead of reacting defensively upon hearing an uncomfortable truth like that one, we should try and increase our understanding and empathy and support for those suffering by using our voice. And as I mentioned before, silence assumes that you don't have anything to say, and everybody here has something to say. So to round up, I would encourage you all to talk to the women in your lives, because statistically, they have been discriminated against or harassed by men. And don't be afraid to challenge your own internalised misogyny, because it exists in all of us, regardless of gender or sex. Choose to challenge gender adversity when you come across it, and it is a choice. Make that choice, and allow the voices of women to blossom, and encourage and support female success. There is enough space for everyone, and we must empower each other to be the best we can be. So just to bring it back to sort of my role, I suppose, when I joined the University of Law, I was looking for a female space, bringing together women from my campus and other campuses. However, there was no such collective. And so I introduced the Women's Network, which connected female law students from across the UK. The Women's Network has become a safe space, a shared and empowering space where women can share ideas, experiences, information. The members contribute to the Liberation newsletter. We've just recorded our first podcast episode. We hold fitness classes, wellbeing events, and we discuss campaigns and all sorts. So there's a lot of energy for demand of women groups. And I would encourage anyone here who's considering sort of joining women's groups or getting involved with activism to do it, because now is the time. There's so much momentum, so much energy, and now would be a really great time to get involved. So feel free to join me and many other women on the Women's Network by registering on our Teams page, following our Instagram pages. There's lots happening on social media at the minute, so get behind that. And there are lots of events happening in the next month for Women's History Month, including life drawing classes, podcasting, panel events, bingo. So yeah, get involved with all of that. And if anybody would like a chat, I will be here afterwards and available by email. But otherwise, thank you for listening, and thank you for having me here today.
Great, thank you so much, Daisy. And I think everyone appreciates and can see the sort of the passion that Daisy has for this subject area. Lots of really interesting things that was mentioned within that talk. I'm sure that you may have some questions that you'd like to pose to Daisy that you can put in that chat box with a Q&A at the start of it, so we know that you've got a question for the panel afterwards. That sort of pressure on the male gaze outside the bathroom was really interesting. The importance of that lived and personal experience, and for men to think about the sort of, I suppose, looking at that uncomfortable truth as well. There was so much encapsulated in such a short talk that can get us hopefully having quite a fruitful discussion in the Q&A, but also afterwards in the networking event as well. So thanks a lot for that, Daisy.